Hello there. Well, that felt wrong. Let me try it again. Hello there. It's really exciting that about 2 months ago, I sat here at this counter and told you guys that I was going to be competing in the United States Barista Championship, and I wanted to take you with me. And I am very grateful and honored that all of you joined me on this very tumultuous and exciting and fun and just interesting journey that we've had for the last 2 months. And here we are on the other side of it. I had a great time. I hope you did as well. And we won the thing. Which is shocking and an honor and a privilege, and it's very exciting and scary and all sorts of emotions all bundled up in one. But today I thought we would have kind of a wrap up of this video series. I started off with the intention of taking you along on this journey and talking about this competition that means a lot to me and means a lot to a lot of people, and it doesn't always get the recognition that I think it deserves. So we're going to wrap up today with some questions and commonly asked things that I'd like to talk about and address. And then next week we're back to normal, baby. One of the primary questions that I have received a lot since, coming back from Boston is like, what happens next for Morgan Drinks Coffee? Like, are you going to stop making videos? And the answer is no. You can be assured that there will be many more weird Will It Coffee videos and sketches and all sorts of stuff. None of that ends. But today we're gonna treat this as a wrap up for now, and then next week we're back to normal. So I sourced a bunch of questions on Instagram, and we're gonna go through these and talk about them. Number one question we have here today is, how did you develop your signature drink? Now, this is that video I made a couple weeks ago talking about my final course. This was the drink that was espresso, orange blossom water, mango puree, and then lime oleo saccharum. The way we started creating it was kind of just throwing flavors and ingredients that we thought would taste good together, like at the wall, and seeing what actually tasted good together. The first edition of our drink was something that had papaya in it, it had a lot of grapefruit in it, and it had a lot of rose in it. That was kind of where we started. And then we decided we wanted to get a little bit more specific. We liked the floralness of it, we liked the tropicality of it, but it needed to evolve a little bit. So we ended up with, instead of papaya, we used mango, we used orange blossom instead of rose, and we ended up with lime instead of grapefruit. When you are serving your drink to the judges, of course you're being graded on the accuracy of how you're describing it and the overall taste of it, but there is this other component, and it's considered synergy with coffee. Essentially what they're looking for is, how does this drink you've created match up with the exact coffee you're serving in the drink? In this case, it was the Sudan Rumé Espresso. So we had to pay attention to that because that's of course on the score sheets, but along with that, we wanted this drink to be replicable and delicious at home with pretty much any coffee you were using. And if those two things seem opposite, it's because they are. It is tricky to create a drink that is specific and yet not specific at the same time. However, we remedied this by thinking about the profile of the Sudan Rumé Espresso I was using and what other coffees share similar profile. So if you go back to my drink creation video, you'll notice that I specify that if you're making this at home, I highly recommend you use a lighter roast of potentially a washed Ethiopian or a Kenyan coffee, because those in general tend to exhibit similar characteristics to what I was using on the stage. So that's a little bit of information about the development of that drink. Number two, how were the judges? Did you get any time to talk to them post-comp? The answer is yes. So actually, when you were all done with the competition, after all the announcements happened, you as a competitor actually get all your score sheets back. And I actually have them. I have a big folder of score sheets right here. These are both my sensory and my technical score sheets from all 3 rounds of competition. And it has a ton of information on it. This really is the guidebook for everything that went right and everything that went wrong in my various stages of competition. I'm gonna have time here in the next couple of weeks actually to reach out and talk to the actual judges who were on stage with me and get, more in-depth information. And this is a super helpful part of competition, because you will find things that you thought you did well that you didn't, and you'll find things that you thought you were lacking in. And it's super helpful to have all this information because it honestly makes you a stronger competitor moving forward. So yes, I get to talk to the judges, and I'm very excited about that. Number 3, did anyone else wear turtlenecks? Yes, actually. Backstage in the competitor area, I think there was a day, maybe on round 1 or perhaps round 2, where there were like a solid 4 or 5 of us all wearing black turtlenecks. It was amazing. Actually, on the very last day during finals, myself and also the competitor Brooke Wolf, who got second place in the entire thing, she was also wearing like a black turtleneck getup, and it was awesome. I was like looking at the two of us and I was like, this twinning is amazing. So there were a lot of turtlenecks on stage, and it made my day every single time. Number 4, do you have any plans to compete again after this? I'm not writing anything off at this point. I think it's still very early in time to like know what's gonna come next, but at this exact moment, I don't necessarily have any plans to compete again in barista. However, that being said, there are so many other aspects of coffee competition and competitions themselves that exist out there. You have the entire circuit of the coffee champs, which goes from brewers to roasters to cup tasters. All of those are super interesting and skills that I would love to hone. Or you have competitions around coffee that just exist outside of this like USCC circuit. So there are lots of options out there. I would say at this point in time, I am far more interested both in judging and volunteering at future competitions, but we'll see. The world is an oyster and I am simply someone trying to figure out my way in all of this. So you probably won't see me again in barista, at least for a very long time, but you might see me in some other ones. So leave it at that. Question number 5, is there any non-dairy in competition? And they're referring to milk. The answer at this time is no. In the United States Barista Championship rules, it is specified that you need to be using cow's milk. So you need to be using dairy milk. A component of this is making sure there is kind of a level playing field across all the ingredients. When you look at non-dairy milks, whether it's oat or soy or almond or any of these things, even if you're looking at one specific milk, across all these different brands, there are a multitude of different recipes and ingredients included in them, which leads to a lot of variance. When you look at dairy milk, there's a lot less variance. I mean, obviously farm to farm and brand to brand, like milks are gonna taste different, but it's very different from then comparing like Calafia's oat milk to like Pacific oat milk. Like they're just gonna look very different. So in order to make things as even as possible, dairy milk is required. That may change in the future as we continue to push towards like more sustainable milks or more like inclusive milks, but at this point in time, no, it is just dairy milk. Number 6, are you planning on using the same coffees in your World Barista Championship rounds? Now, this is kind of the next big thing that happens, because now that we are past the United States Barista Championship, there is another level to this that I'm going on to, and that is the World Barista Championship. Many countries across the world have their own barista competitions. The winners of all of those are coming to Melbourne in September in Australia. Very exciting. And we will all be competing for the World Barista Championship. And in that time, my routine is probably going to change a little bit. I think the core bones, if you will, of my routine will stay the same, that being kind of my topic and structure. For the next 4 months leading up to September, we have a lot of time to really refine and hone things. So we're gonna take a lot of time to really zero in on each aspect of my routine and see if it needs to be improved or if it can stay the same. So I don't know if my coffee is gonna change. It may or it may not. I had the honor of working with the farm Immaculata in Colombia, who produce amazing coffees. They were so exciting to serve on stage. So I'm really excited to continue working with them, and perhaps we will see some evolution of the coffees I'm using, but who knows? As soon as I find out, I will let you know at least. Number 7, how did you start competing and what helped you get there your first year? Now, I've competed in 2 previous seasons of USBC. I competed at the national level in 2019, which was my first year, and I competed at the regional level in 2020. I started competing mostly because I was curious what it was about. I was at the time working for a pretty small cafe. My bosses, both of them, had competed in the USBC in previous years, so they knew about it, had some experience, and they brought it up to me, and I being a pretty competitive person and someone who knew they wanted a career of some sort in coffee, I was like, I want to try that. I was like, that sounds like fun. So I was privileged enough to have a cafe and bosses that supported me through that. I just kind of did it, I guess. You know, I was very fresh. I was very new into coffee. So a lot of what I did was just trial and error and figuring it out. But I had, thankfully, the support of my bosses and my coworkers who were willing to try all the weird drinks I created. And that's kind of just how I got into it. I genuinely had no idea what I was doing. I just kind of threw myself at it saying, I'm going to try this. Maybe it'll go terribly, but maybe I'll have a good time and learn something at the end of it. Number 8, is it the same judges for all 3 rounds of the USBC? Yes and no, because there is a predetermined pool of certified judges who are judging throughout the entire weekend of USBC. However, it is pretty rare to have like overlap on your panels between like round 1 and semifinals. I think I had one judge on my sensory panel who happened to be on my panel for both round 1 and semifinals, but for the most part, it does switch up quite a bit because you have so many competitors going back to back that they have to cycle the judges to make sure they're not worn out and that they have plenty of time to do all their grading and all sorts of things. That being said, once you get to the finals, which is 6 competitors, all 6 of those competitors do have the exact same panel of judges. So those judges will come out. It'll be like, I believe like 8 of them, or pardon me, like 7 or 8 of them in total between the techs and the sensories. They will watch your routine, they will judge, they will go backstage, wait for the next competitor to set up, and then those exact same people will come back out. So to clarify, different judges, all sorts for the first 2 days, but once you get to the final day, all competitors will have the exact same panel of judges. I hope that makes sense. That was a lot of words. Number 9, did you get to try out other contestants' work? Yes, actually. So this was a really, really cool thing this year, more so than any other years I've competed. We had so much fun backstage. Like all of us competitors just, I think there was an air of like excitement and like just enthusiasm and support the entire week. That was super, super special. One of the really cool things I think about the USBC is that you're not competing with other people. You're kind of competing against yourself. Like by someone else doing well, it doesn't mean that you've done poorly. It's very much like you exist in kind of a silo as your routine. And so that being said, there is so much support that happens behind stage, whether someone like breaks a glass or runs out of milk or whatever happens, all the other competitors are there to help support you as well. But I got to try a lot of really, really delicious coffees and I got to like bring home a bunch as well. I'm actually drinking the runner-up's coffee this year, Brooke Wolf. She gave me some of her coffee and we brewed it and it's delicious. So it's a really cool kind of take home of like, I got to try all these delicious coffees and now I'm at home still brewing them, and that's very cool. Number 10, how did you cope with caffeine consumption, especially leading up to the competition? Jitters, anxiety, etc. I'm pretty in tune with my caffeine tolerance and I'm very careful with it as well. I don't think I drink as much coffee as a lot of you probably think I do, or the speed at which I talk indicates that I do. I'm pretty conscious of it. And that being said, on the actual day of the competition, I think I maybe had only like 4 ounces of coffee before going on stage. I didn't want to be over caffeinated. I also was much more focused on making sure I had eaten enough. So getting proper nutrients is sometimes difficult for me when I'm nervous. So I was just like, eat protein bars, don't drink coffee. In terms of how I prepared for competition with the amount of coffee I had to drink, I just used a spit cup. It's kind of disgusting, but it's kind of a safe way to dial in lots of coffees, to taste and evaluate lots of things, but not become over caffeinated. You just carry around a gross cup of coffee spit, you taste your things, then you like get rid of it, and that's what I did. Number 11, will Lance continue to be your coach for the World Barista Championship? Yes, I'm incredibly excited about it. I've told the story in a couple different places, but my collaboration with Onyx Coffee Lab and with Lance was like birthed out of this like wonderful coincidence. When I found out I was competing in the USBC, I didn't really have a plan. I didn't have a roaster in mind. I didn't have a coach in mind. I just kind of was like, oh God, I need to piece this together really fast. And it just so happened that 2 days later, Lance was actually on a work trip to Portland, which he lives in Arkansas. So this was quite a coincidence. And he popped in to say hello because we'd never really met in person before. We'd only known each other online. And he was like, I saw you were competing. What's your plan? And I was like, yeah, no, I don't have one. And it became this perfect moment of, we kind of sat down and realized that they didn't have a competitor in the running this year. And a lot of our values really aligned. And more so than that, Lance and I really wanted to work together. It just worked out perfectly. He's a fantastic coach. It was an honor to work with Onyx Coffee Lab because honestly, competing is like, it is collaboration. No competitor is up on the stage by themselves. There's always a team behind them. So for that team to be Onyx was like a privilege and an honor. But yeah, we have a lot of work to do for Worlds, and both of us are incredibly excited about it. So you will be seeing a lot more of Lance. Number 12, when you misspoke the recipe in round 2 semifinals, did time briefly freeze for you? Yes, it wasn't actually that bad. So if you've watched all 3 of my routines, you will notice that in my semifinals routine, which was round 2, I had a moment where I misspoke and I had to go, pardon me judges, what I meant to say was, and then continued on. It was a little scary. I will say I have done a really good job of prep, of making sure I was super comfortable with my script. I could say it like backwards and forwards. So thankfully when I had that little like whoopsie, I was able to recover really quickly and still track where I was in my script. But it was definitely one of those moments where I was like, oh my gosh, keep going, don't stop. Something that's kind of interesting that I'll just throw out there as kind of a little anecdote is when you are on stage as a competitor, there are kind of two main components of your presentation that you yourself are paying attention to. There is the very like front-facing presentation, which is going to be your speaking, your presence on stage, your interactions with the judges, and then there's the technical aspect, which is your workflow, your cleanliness, your tamping, your all of those things. And so interestingly enough, during my round one, I actually think I did a much better job with my presentation, but I did a worse job with my technical. Then in the semifinals, I think I did a better job with my technical and a worse job with my presentation. The finals, I think I did pretty well on both, which was good, but it was kind of interesting seeing that switch happen during the first two rounds. So if you go back and watch my routines in depth, I think you'll actually be able to see some of those missteps and like good things that happened and the shifts between the two rounds. Number 13, how were you feeling as you were competing? It's a good question. Competing is a lot of public speaking, which can be terrifying. This is very strange to say. I actually really like public speaking. I enjoy presenting. I think a lot of that has to do with how much time I've just spent online talking to a camera. But I was a theater kid growing up. I did all sorts of like performing arts growing up. So I'm pretty comfortable on stage. I think a lot of my nerves came from kind of the technical aspects. It's a lot of like very much keeping like tuned into what you're physically doing along with speaking. And thankfully the speaking comes pretty easily to me. So I was able to really like divert all of my like brain power to like tamp level, like make sure you're not spilling stuff, like all that sort of stuff. But overall, when I was on stage, I felt like I was having a lot of fun, which was a pretty unique and special thing to feel because it's definitely a high stress, high intensity situation out there. I mean, you're being broadcasted, there's an audience, there's judges, there's all this stuff. But I had a really, really good time on stage, and I hope that came across in my performance because I left the stage each time, honestly, feeling like I had said what I wanted to say and that I had had a good time. And frankly, that was enough for me. Score sheets aside, I felt like I did a really good job to what I wanted to do. So there's that answer. Number 14, does any part of the competition seem easy or come natural to you? Kind of similar to the last question, the public speaking and presentation part probably comes the easiest to me. Again, it's not easy. There's definitely, I still feel a little bit of those nerves and it's stressful, but I think that's the easiest part for me. The most difficult part really is like the technical for me. That's something that I always need to be aware of. I mean, if you've been on this channel for a quick minute, you know that Morgan spills coffee is like an ongoing theme throughout everything I do. And that did not change once I was on stage. I had to be very, very aware of that component of myself. Number 15, who did you call once you won? I got off stage. I called my parents first. I called my grandparents second. And then I just turned off my phone for the rest of the night. It was a very overwhelming night. It was a very exciting night. There was so much going on. And I think I looked at my phone and I went, I'm gonna ignore all of this for like 24 hours. So I turned off my phone after talking to my family and we went and had dinner and then I slept for like 11 hours. Number 16. What's next from here in terms of competition prep? Do you have to make new menus? As I mentioned before, the next thing for me right now is the World Barista Championship. That is happening in September, and don't worry, y'all are coming along for the preparation of that too. But that being said, it looks a little bit different than how it did for the USBC because I've already got the bones of my routine done. I have a very strong theme to my presentation that I want to stick with. I've done already a lot of developing of drinks and dialing in, and those skills will transfer to the next round. But we do have time now that we didn't have before to really evaluate and look closely at what went right and what went wrong. And then it's time to really perfect those things. So as I mentioned before, I have all my score sheets. I'm gonna be talking to my judges here really soon, and that is gonna influence a lot of what changes in my upcoming routine. Because essentially everything I did correctly during this round of the competition needs to be dialed up to like 150%, and everything I did poorly needs just that much more attention spent on it. So it's gonna be a lot of refining and honing and reevaluating to make sure we come to the world stage with like the best possible thing we can create. Then number 17, what's next in your career? That is the $1 million question. It's a question I've been thinking a lot about. What I've been telling people is that my career in coffee, as a content creator, as whatever you want to call me, has evolved so much in the past like 2 years in ways that I could have never ever imagined. Like I never thought that I would be here doing what I'm doing with the audience I have. And that is incredible and like awe-inspiring to myself and like shocking. Like it's so surprising to me every day still that I get to do this as a career. And I imagine that 2 years from now, I'll be kind of in a similar place of like doing something that I never imagined I'd be doing. So I'm letting things kind of like rest for now. I'm still coming down from all this like competition hype. And that being said, we're, you know, it's Morgan Drinks Coffee. I'll be drinking a lot more coffee. I'll be making a lot more coffee videos, and we're gonna continue towards the world stage together, which I'm super excited about. So yeah, that is the immediate next steps, and where my career goes, we shall find out together, which is very exciting and terrifying and all the things at once. So I hope this answered some of the questions you may have had. I'll do my best to hang out in the comment section for a while if you have any additional questions that I can perhaps answer quickly. But yeah, this is gonna be the last video going into the current playlist of the United States Barista Championship 2022. It's very exciting. It's been awesome to have you all along for this journey. That also being said, I'm excited to go back to your regularly scheduled programming. So, as usual, I am Morgan Drinks Coffee. You can find me pretty much everywhere I'm active on at Morgan Drinks Coffee. Here on YouTube once a week plus shorts. You can find me on TikTok and Instagram almost every single day. And yeah, I am very honored to be your 2022 United States Barista Champion. And I am very excited to do some very silly things with coffee here in the future. So until next time, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you again very soon.